Hello, everyone. Hope things are going well for you. So, as I said in my announcement that I sent out, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the test today, and then answer any questions that you may have about anything. So, give you kind of an overview of what we'll be covering. So, I'm going to switch to my other camera now. Oops, I'm not even on there. Sorry about that. There we go. So the test is Wednesday, and I'm going to give you 60 minutes to do it. In the past, as in last quarter, I did a 2-part test, but I don't think it's necessary. I think that you have enough going on. I'm just going to give you a single test this time, more in line with what I would have done had we had a live class where you'd been limited to a 50-minute lecture. So and I don't know, depending on your schedules, I don't know if you have class before or after. So I'm trying to make it as accommodating as possible and give you the maximum amount of time. So the test will be available probably starting at 1:55 or so, and it'll be timed. You'll have 60 minutes to complete it, and then and it'll tell me. But the test itself won't disappear until probably 3:30 or 3:45. So unlike the quizzes where I don't have them disappear, this will. So it's important that you don't start taking the test at say 2:45, because the test will disappear possibly before you're finished with it. All right. So the format of the test will be more similar to the last spring quarter. So if you look on Canvas, you'll see that there's a list of exams from spring and winter of last year. So I would definitely review those to give you a sense of the format. So typically on a test like this, because of the limited amount of time that you have, they won't be very calculation intensive problems, because I'm not testing you on your ability to do algebra and math. So most likely the way I lay it out is you'll have between 3 and 4 questions. And so breaking it down, the first question may have a draw 3 body diagrams. So there won't be any solving. You're just going to look at the image I give you, and you're going to draw the appropriate 3 body diagram and make sure that you show all forces and reactions. Now, the exam is open note, open book. It'd be hard otherwise to limit that. So, and I will be, it'll be a live exam, meaning that starting at 2 o'clock, I will, from basically 1:55 till a little after 3:15 or so, I'll be here, and we'll be taking it all pretty much at the same time. So just like we would in a classroom. And it's not so that I can keep an eye on you. It's more so that if you have questions at the immediate time, you can ask me, because I think that sometimes, even though I try to make the test as clear as possible, there may be things that you may not understand. And if it warrants everyone knowing it, then I will. So if you have a question, you can either send me a chat through Zoom, or you can just unmute and just ask it outright. So again, getting back to this, so first part, draw some free body diagrams, show forces and reactions. Shouldn't take too much time. I would definitely have, page 173, I think it's 172, 173, look at that. That shows you the different types of reactions that we deal with. You should also look at bearings. And so you may recall that on some of the problems in chapter 4, they deal with rotations or bearings. And so, for example, you may have something like this where you have a shaft, and then it comes together at a bearing, and then that bearing keeps going. And so this type of bearing can have, if you have something like this, where this is rotating about it, it'll have a reaction definitely in this direction and that direction, but this direction is questionable. So you won't know it from looking at it. I'll have to tell you whether or not it has that. And that'll be the same in the problems too. So it's important that you read the directions and read everything that is written down. Make sure that you know exactly what you need to do. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. So show all forces and reactions, and then not now. Sorry about that. So anyway, getting back to this. So free body diagrams, that's the first part. And then we'll have probably a second question that'll be something, might be something at chapter 3. So maybe some kind of moment or force moment, or what's the other word I'm looking for? A force couple system. Or let's see what else. Anything pretty much out of chapter 3, or it might be a 2D type problem from chapter 4. And it might have a few parts to it. It may have you do a calculation. And then the last problem, and I might have 2 of these that are shorter. And then the last problem, the third problem, will be a longer problem, and it'll be something like a 3D equilibrium. So I typically always put one of these on my exam, so it'd be definitely to your advantage to complete the homework. I know the homework isn't due until Wednesday night. I wanted to make sure that you guys had access to it for the test, but I would make sure that you solve those and understand how to do them. If you don't, we can talk about that here, or you can come to office hour, whatever, but they'll most high likelihood there'll be a 3D equilibrium problem. So I would say that the exam, I try to give you as much ahead of time as I can, because I know there's a lot of material, but the thing is that you need to be familiar with it, because even though I've limited it to 3 or 4 questions, it does take time, and you don't have really time during the exam to learn the material. So you need to come in knowing it. And so the more familiar you are, the better off you'll be. So if we think about all the different topics that we've covered, we have essentially chapters 1 through 4. And so chapter 1 was really nothing but sig figs. We had chapter 2, which was basic vectors. And basic vectors and adding, adding vectors, and a little bit of equilibrium at the end. And then there's chapter 3. Well, it was probably, we had several topics there. We had moment about a line, or sorry, moment about a point. Points. We had moment about a line, which was a scalar. We had a force couple system, and then we had couple equivalent. So again, review the quiz, review the homework, and then chapter 4 was really just 2D and 3D equilibrium. So that's essentially the main topics that I would be drawing from. So chapter 2, I'm probably not going to give you a question directly out of that, just because the stuff we learn in chapter 2 builds on chapter 3 or goes into chapter 3 in order to do the moments about the points, the lines, the fourth couple systems, and also more so in chapter 4 where we have the 2D, 3D equilibriums. So I'd say that pretty much covers it. So so the way the test will work is it will be posted. You'll download it from Canvas, and there'll be a probably a place for you to place some answers. I'm not sure yet. What I may do, and this is I'll probably confirm this before the test, but where you download the test, and then you just scan it and turn it back into me. So you just download a file, the exam winter 21, and it'd be a doc file or PDF, probably a doc, or docx, sorry. And then you just download it. You can work right. You don't have to necessarily print the exam. You can just work right off the screen. Now, one thing I'll say about the difference between the tests and the homework is that you don't have to do the find and the given, and it's not as formal, because I realize times at crunch, I won't be that picky about that. But what I would look for, though, is obviously a good free body diagram. And so you need to make that clear. Don't make it, like this small. Say that's the force there and the reaction there. I can't read it. I can't grade it. So, make it reasonably sized. Doesn't have to be super neat. If you do have a straight edge, or you can use a credit card, whatever, something like this helps a lot. Just it helps you draw quicker and neater. I'm not going to grade on neatness on the test, but again, it has to be legible. So that, and the other thing is that you want to show me as much work as you can. That's important, because how much you show is if you don't get the answer correct, I'm going to look at your process. So you want to have your general. The one thing I want to see is your general equation. So if you're doing a 3D equilibrium problem, then you should have, let's say, it's like the door problem in the homework, where you have a CX there, you have this and this, that's a B, then you have that and that there, and you have the weight there. So this is the homework out of the problem out of homework, and that's AX and AY and BY and BX. Sorry, it's a little messy, but you basically have two forces here, two forces there, force there, force there. So if you were to sum the moments about B to 0, then I would want to see that equation where you wrote out R cross A with A relative to B plus R C relative to B crossed with C plus R G relative to B crossed with the weight, and all that equals 0. So I'd want to see this equation before you did anything else. That tells me you know what you're doing, and then you go in and you fill in the respective values and you solve if necessary. Depending on the length of the problem, I may have you just set it up. Now, if I do have you just set it up, what I mean by just setting up means you get to the point where you have the matrix. So whatever your R A relative to B vector is and your A is, you would have, your coefficients here, and in this case, it would be AX and AY and 0, and then plus, and then so forth. And so you'd have as many numbers that you could find there equaling to 0. So that's what I mean by setup. You have to show everything, show the matrix. The only thing you don't have to do is subsequently do the cross products and solve, since I know that's just math and you guys can do it. So that's something. I may have you do it, I may not. It depends. I'm still formulating the test, but just to be aware that's what I want. Okay. So that's pretty much it. That's what I expect on the test. There is a study guide, as I said in the announcement. It's on under the week 5 materials. So I would download it and look at it. Pretty much summarizes what I've just talked about, and also look at the prior tests. So, what questions do you guys have? Don't all speak at once.
Does the 60 minutes include us uploading our work to you as well?
No, the 60 minutes is the time that you have to work on the test.
All
So
right.
one of the things, and it's it'll it's not going to disappear on you. It'll tell me how long you took. So when I look at the test, when I look at your input, because if I set a time limit of 60 minutes, then after that time is over, it'll just tell me when I go to grade it that it's late. So at that point, I look at it and I say, okay, it's late. And what time was it? It was 65 minutes. Well, that's reasonable. If it starts getting into like 70 minutes, 75 minutes, and then that's not reasonable. So I think 5 minutes, unless you have a major catastrophe, is reasonable for you to be able to scan and upload. So, but I think I just had a thought there. Oh, I guess I don't know if you guys have classes before or after that or not. And so I don't know if any of you have issue with having to come from one class and go to the next class, if that's going to be a problem. Because you're normally, you would have, if I was live with you in the classroom, and you'd have the 50 minutes and that would be it, because then you'd have to run because there'd be another class coming into the room. We don't have that issue here. So I can afford you some more extra time. I just don't want it to be that if some of you have to run, that you're at a disadvantage to others. So do we understand all the material? We understand everything from chapter 3, everything from chapter 4. Is the homework clear on chapter 4? Any questions? Any at all?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
For the first problem for the free body diagrams, are there going to be dimensions that we're going to need to include, or is it just the forces?
Um, on Are you talking on number? Are you talking about number? Are you talking about the test or the homework?
The test.
Oh, no. And so generally in free body diagrams, I don't look for dimensions because it can get really messy really quick. And so if you can put them in there, all the better. But I'd say that if you're drawing them, especially given the exam, just make sure you get the forces and the reactions. Don't worry about the dimensions. And speaking of, and it made me think on the homework, and probably some of you probably saw that, and I apologize for not switching this, but there's on the first problem, number 1, it says find the reaction at A. It should say the reaction at B, because you're really looking at the elbow joint B. And hopefully most of you intuitively saw that that was a typo when you did that problem, because the elbow joint's obviously not at A. So otherwise, we clear on everything? I mean, I don't want to hold you here if you don't need to, but I want to give you guys opportunities. Normally in a classroom setting, we would do a review session, and then people would usually, for the last 20 minutes of class to a half hour, would ask questions about homework or that. But if you guys don't have any, then so be it. Feel like you understand everything?
Yeah, what is going to be like the point breakdown for the different questions?
Oh, so the test is worth 250, and the only reason I did that is because I don't like partial points, and that. So as you notice, I'm trying to make sure that the points that are on Canvas are all equally weighted, so that way you can keep track of your grade. So the make the test is worth 250, and most likely the way it'll break down is the last problem will be worth 100, and the first problem probably be worth 50, and then there'll probably be two, it'd probably be like 50, 50, 50, 100, or it might be 40, 60, 60, 100, something like that. So usually the early problems are worth less because they're easier. Like the free body diagrams will be worth so many points each, but the calculations will be worth that much more. But don't be, the fact it's 250 doesn't mean that I could make it, out of 100. It's just math. So it just makes it easier for me to grade. And when I grade, I'm not, the correct answer is obviously part of the grade, but really it's the process. So if you make a math error, that's not a big deal. Don't strive for it, but I understand under the pressure of tests that can happen. So what I'm really looking for is that you show me that you can walk the problem through and do the calculations and get an answer that's reasonable too. So also, if you get an answer that's completely unreasonable, like 10 million pounds on something like, say, number one, you got a 10 million pound reaction on an arm, then obviously that's not reasonable. So if you do get that and you run out of time, at least note that that's not reasonable so that I don't think you're crazy.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Professor, I had a question from part 1 of quiz 3. In your solution, you kind of only was resolving like one of the forces instead of the other one. Do you know why that is?
So only one of the forces into the other one. Let's see. Quiz 3. Oh yeah, that's the one we just did. Let me pull up Canvas real quick. Okay, so you're saying, why did I only use one force?
Yeah.
So remember that if you have, if you have something, so essentially if we look at that force, we have something like this. We have a pole goes across like this, and then it goes down. So if we break our forces up, we essentially have one force that goes like this, and one force that goes like that, right? And that's our force that's in the positive, negative y direction. So basically this is 4/5 of 450, which was, what was that, 360? Yeah, I think that's 360. And then we know that the vertical component of that was 3/5 of 450. And that gave us a value of, I think, 280. So remember that when we're trying to figure out a force times distance, we go from here to the force, right? And so if you think of like a couple like that, if this is 360 and that's 360 and the distance between them is 0.4, then that moment is equal to 360 times 0.4. So I guess your question is, why don't we put a 2 in front of it?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, because, so if you think about it, if I can take a moment at any point. So let's say I take my moment at that point there. So at that point there, my force times distance is what? 360 times 0.4, right? Now, if I take it right here, then let's say that that's at 0.1 and this is now 0.3, then what does it become? It's basically 360 times 0.1 plus 360 times 0.3, which is the same. So,
Okay, that makes sense.
and that's why you did it there. So you just had to have the one, you knew the one was doing that and the other one was doing that. So that's why you had a positive z component and a positive y component, but no x. So I don't know if I'll set it up like this where you'll actually put the answers in Canvas. Probably for the ease of, for you guys, and I may just have it so that you just write it out and then box it, and then you don't have to take the time of putting it into Canvas, because when I grade it, I'm just going to look at your work and then follow your process through. That tends to be a little easier both ways. So what else?
Oh, you might have said this before, but will we have to be like on a Zoom call, cameras on? For
Yes,
this?
I would like you guys to have cameras on during the exam. So I know you're all muted. Muted, but with cameras that's what I would prefer. And then um, and then not that I'm going to be eyeballing you the whole time. I just it'll be good to just if you guys have questions, then I can um, take care of that right away. So most exams, at least in ME, I've talked to other instructors, they've been live where you have the camera actually focused on like where you're drawing, or where your hand is. I don't, from the few people I've talked to, I don't like that. I don't want you guys to be, to feel self-conscious. So, just have the camera on. I'll be here probably just hanging out doing stuff. And then if I hear you chime in or send me a text, then I will answer your question and move on. But hopefully it'll be self-explanatory so we won't have a lot of interruptions. Okay, well, if there's you're free to go. If anyone wants to stick around and ask a question, that's fine. I'll hang around. Otherwise, see me in office hours, or else I'll see you guys at 2 o'clock on Wednesday. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.